What's up everybody, welcome back. So in the last episode we pretty much finished up our weapon pickups, and before I want to continue working with pickups and things like that, I would like to finish the inventory series, so then I can show how I would implement it to the project myself and avoid confusion along that way. So I think for now it would be nice to continue working on the lobby and things like that. So we're gonna start looking at setting up different profile slots so we can have multiple save games, and we can select a different profile, create new profiles and reset a profile and things like that. So if you like the series, please consider leaving a like, and you're welcome to join the Game Dev Raw Discord or become a member of the YouTube channel. And if you become a member, you will also get access to some premium channels, which also give you a few premium downloads. So let's just start working on our profile system. So two small things I want to take a look at first. First of all, for the weapon pickup inside of the construction script. So we have the child blueprint for the weapon pickup, and inside here I forgot to actually link up the boolean for the ammo pickup. So I did hook up the branch over here, but we also want to make sure that we set the actual boolean on the weapon. And this will make sure that if we try to pick up ammo for a weapon we don't have, that won't work. So this should fix a small issue with the ammo pickups and the weapon pickups, just like this. And I also want to dive into the game instance, and in there I forgot to hook up a little something as well. So over here for the start solo game, we create our option string with the different options, but I do not actually plug in the option string into the open level name. So let's make sure we do that over here as well. And I did actually do it for the execute server travel command, so that should be fine. So I just forgot it over here for the start solo game. So with those things out of the way, we can start working on our save slots. And to make that work, we want to make sure that we can use the actual player profile slot as a variable. And on the game instance, we pretty much everywhere plug that already in. So we're using actual variables for the load and save game slot nodes. But inside of the player controllers, we did not. So we want to make sure that we fix that first. So I'm going to open my shooter player controller, and inside here we have a few load and save nodes. So we want to make sure that we grab the save slot name from the game instance, and because we're saving and loading the profile on the local player controller, and the local player controller has access to the local game instance, so we can just access our game instance, get the save slot that's stored on the game instance, and make sure that we plug it in the save and load slots over here. So first of all, if we have our shooter player controller, we want to go to our multicast begin play. And then over here, right before we load the game from slot, so we are actually on the local player controller, we already checked that over here. So we want to disconnect it before we're loading the game from slot, and we're going to get our game instance. And we can simply cast it to the shooter game instance. And then from the shooter game instance, we can get the player profile slot. So that's the variable that's already on there. So get player profile slot. And we're going to promote this to a variable on the player controller. So promote to variable. That's good to go. And make sure that we hook it up in between here. And then we want to make sure that we plug it into all of the save and load nodes. So first of all, let's start with this one. We can simply plug it in over here. Then let's right click and find references. So there's actually only one on the player controller for loading, so that should be good. And then we also want to make sure that we grab some save nodes. So we should have a function over here, save XP and level. So we have save game to slot over here. Let's plug it in right away. And let's make sure this is the only one. No, it's not. So we have the save picked up weapon function, and make sure that we plug it in over here as well. So that should take care of the shooter player controller, and now we want to do the same thing on the menu player controller. So let's open up that one as well, and I'm gonna grab it in my example project because this is slightly different. So for this one we want to go to the initial setup event on the event graph. So let's have a little look. That should be all the way up here somewhere. So initial setup, and this will be called from the game mode and then runs on the owning client. So we are on the local controller again, and then we want to make sure that we grab the player profile from the game instance. So we can do that on begin play, and we want to make sure that before we load our saved profile over here and make the call back to the lobby, that we have the profile loaded. So we're gonna add a little wait with a branch in here first. Let's create a new boolean and call that isSlotLoaded. Then we're gonna grab a branch in here and check for the isSlotLoaded boolean, and then simply hook up a delay from 0.05 seconds or something like that. So plug this into the false pin. So if it's not loaded, we're gonna wait, and if it's loaded, we can continue. And then we can go to our begin play event. So over here we are on the local controller as well, so we can grab our game instance again. So get game instance, and we're gonna cast it to our shooter game instance. So hook it up to begin play, and then from the shooter game instance we're gonna get our profile slot and promote it to a variable on our controller. That should be good to go, and then we want to make sure that we set our isSlotLoaded boolean to true. So if event begin play is done, then this will give the command to our initial setup event to continue. So that should work. And then in here we also want to make sure that we replace all the save and load slots. So let's make sure that we grab one of them. So we have the save selected model, for example. And in here we have a save game to slot. So first let's plug it in over here. And then we're simply gonna find all the references. So we have the load saved profile function. And this is actually using a local slot name. So if we go to the beginning of this function, we can simply set the local variable. So drag it in over here. And for the local variable, plug in the player profile slot. So this will take care of the entire function over here. Then we have the save selected character. We want to plug it in here as well. Save selected model, so we already did that one. Then we have a save selected skin, so plug it in over here as well. And the save selected loadout, and there it goes as well. So there should be a loading slot somewhere as well, probably. Let me see. So we can probably look it up over here. Load. So we have a load saved profile. And that's a function. And we already took care of that one. So we have a load game over here. Let's see if there's any more. No, there's not. So we should be good to go for the controllers. And we have that out of the way. Now let's set up a new save game for our game settings, and inside that save game we're actually gonna store the active profile slot, and we do not want to store it on the actual player profile save game because we're gonna use 5 different slots for them. So then if we change it, we need to change it on all 5 of them, and that's going to be a bit confusing. And in the end, we probably need a separate save game for something like game settings anyway, so it doesn't really hurt to create a new save game. So let's create a new blueprint class, and we do not want to create an actor. So we're going to create a blueprint class, and we're going to create a save game. So let's call this save game GameSettings, and open it up. And for now, we're just going to store one variable in here, and that's going to be the active profile slot. So that's a string. Let's add a new variable, active profile slot, and turn it into a string. Compile it and make sure the default is empty. So that should be good to go. And with the save game in place, we can take a look at changing some stuff inside of our game instance. So let's open up our game instance, and first let's take care of a few new variables that we need. So let's create all player profile slots, and that's going to be an array. So player profile slots, and that's an array of strings. So turn it into an array strings and compile it. We're going to give it 5 defaults, so we're going to make 5 player profile slots. So let's add 5 of them, and I'm simply going to call this something like a player slot 0, and then assign the other ones as well. So we have player slot 1, 2, 3 and 4. So those are the available slots that we have. And then I also want to create an array of the player profile structures. So I'm going to duplicate the player profile, and that's going to be all player profiles. So we can use this inside of our menu, for example, to display all the profile information. So we're going to make sure that we store all the saved profiles in here as well. So with those variables in place, let's take a look at a few new functions. First, we're going to create one that loads our GameSettings save game. So create a new function and call it load GameSettings. So first of all, what we want to do in here is check if we have a save game already. So does a save game exist? And we want to create a slot for this. So let's call this something like GameSettings. And add a branch in here. So if it doesn't exist, we need to create it. So we're going to create a save game object. Right click. Oh, come on. Thank you. Create a save game object. So plug this one into the false bin, and we want to create our GameSettings save game. So for the return value, we're going to promote it to a variable, and that's our save game GameSettings. And then over here, I'm going to save it to slot immediately. So save game to slot, and I'm going to use the GameSettings slot again. So this way it'll be stored inside the slot, and the next time we check, it will be valid. Even if we are not actually using it this time, it's just valid the next time. And if it's already valid, we're simply going to load a game from slot. And we want to load the GameSettings slot. And this time we need to cast it because it doesn't know what type of save game it's loading. So we're going to cast it to our save game GameSettings. And then we can store it inside of our variable again. So drag that setter in and plug it in over here. And that's the function done. So we're going to return over here. And that will take care of loading the save game. Okay, that was just a default variable error, so compile it again and it's gone. So with this function in place, we're going to create one to load all of the profiles. So create a new function, load all profiles. And let me double check. So we're not going to use an input. So in here, we're simply going to drag in our save game GameSettings. And from the save game GameSettings, we're going to get the active profile slot. And we're going to store it inside of the player profile slot on our game instance. So do that right away. Then we're going to grab a for each loop over here. And we're going to loop through all of our player profile slots. So we have the defaults in here that will define the actual slot names. And then we're going to use our existing function checked for saved profile. But we're going to make some changes to it. So let's open that function up first, because we're going to change it up pretty much actually. Let's see, I'm going to get rid of this and I'm simply going to disconnect it for now. So, well, we do want to check if a save game exists, and we do want a boolean in here, so let's hook up those. For the player profile slot, I'm going to disconnect it, get rid of it, and use it as an input for the function. So that's going to be the profile slot name. And then I'm also going to give another input, and that's our profile index. So that's an integer. Let me see. Now let's do the false branch first. So if we do not have a save game for this profile slot, previously we created one so it became valid, but we're not going to do that this time. We're only going to create them if we actually create a new profile by clicking the create new profile button. So if the save game is not valid, all we want to do is grab our player profile array and make sure that we have something in here to display in the menus, and that's it. So we're gonna grab the index. No, we need a set array element first. So drag off here, set array element, and then we can plug the index into the inventory index from the input. And we're gonna make sure that we enable size to fit, and we're simply gonna drag off the item and make a structure. And we're going to leave everything empty, so we have an empty profile stored to display in the menu, and plug that one into the false bin. Now for the true bin, we're going to add another branch in here. And the first thing we want to do is make sure that we check our player profile slot. So we grabbed it from our save game settings and immediately stored it in here, but we didn't check if there actually was anything in here. So we're going to drag off here and we're going to do not equal to, and you want to use the string option, so not equal, and in this case I'm going to use case insensitive, but it doesn't really matter because I'm going to leave the box empty anyway. And then off here I'm going to drag for an end boolean, and we want to check if it's not empty, and if it's not empty we want to compare it to the input. So we're going to drag off here and look for equal string, and again do case insensitive. So plug this one into the end node, and we want to compare it to the profile slot name from the input over here. So if our player profile slot is not empty and it matches the slot name of this one, that means we are actually working on the active profile. So we're going to plug this in here. And if this is the active profile, then we want to call our load profile function. So load profile makes sure that we load the profile from the save game, and we're storing it inside of the player profile structure on this game instance. And let's see, we do not actually store the save game, so we need to do that. So over here we're going to drag in our save game player profile and hook up the return value to a setter. And then because this is actually the active profile, we want to store that inside of an integer. So we're going to create a new variable and call this the active profile index. Turn this in a single integer, and we're going to set it over here. So we're going to set it to the input, the profile index, and we also want to create a new boolean, and that's called isProfileSelected. Turn it into a boolean and set it to true over here. And then the last thing we want to do is make sure that we store our player profile structure inside of our all player profiles array, because that is something we didn't do yet inside the load function. So set array element for all player profiles, plug in our player profile structure, which is loaded by this function, so it holds the correct information now. And we're going to enable size to fit. And again, we need the index from the input, so we can just plug it in over here. So that's that branch done as well. Let's see. So if this is actually a profile that we want to load. So there is something in there. It's not empty, but it's not the active profile. Then we're going to simply load a game from slot. And for the slot name, we want to use the input from the function. So plug it in over here. We need to cast this because it doesn't know what it's loading. So SaveGame player profile. And from this we can simply get our player profile structure. So get profile, and we're only going to store it into the array. So grab the array set element, plug it in over here. And this time we want to store this player profile, and we're going to use the index from the input again. So the array will match up. That should be it for this function. So we're going to grab a return node, plug it into these ones, and we also have a loose branch over here. And we can get rid of this stuff. We don't need that anymore. So this function is done as well, checked for save profile. So we can go back to the previous function, load all profiles, and we're going to call our check for saved profile. So we can plug in the array element and the index from our for each loop. And let me double check. So if the loop is done, there's one thing we want to do, and that's dragging our isProfile again. And in this case, we're going to check if our player profile slot is empty. So let's drag off here and look for 3 times the equal sign. So if it's empty, and then we're going to flip this around, so not boolean, and we can directly plug it in over here. So we do actually set it over here if it's true, but we do not set it to false anywhere if it happens to become false. So let's make sure that we have that option tackled, and that's done. So from here we can grab a return node as well. Let's see, then we need another function to change our active profile. So that's going to be the last function that we're going to make inside of the game instance. So let's change active profile. For this one we need an input, so that's going to be the new profile index. And then we want to make sure that we switch everything around. So the first thing we're going to do is drag in our player profile slot. And we're also going to grab our array of profile slots and get an index. So get a copy, plug in the new player profile index, and store the result in the setter. Then we want to make sure that we store it to our SaveGame GameSettings. So let's drag that one in, and from the SaveGame we're going to set our active profile slot. Plug it in over here and make sure that we actually save the SaveGame. So drag off here and SaveGame to slot. So that's our GameSettings slot, and that should be over here, GameSettings. Just like this. Then we're going to drag in all of our player profiles, and from this one we're also going to get a copy, and again we're going to get it from the input of this function, and we can use this to store it inside of our active profile. So let's get the player profile info, grab a setter for that one, and hook this one up. There we go. And then we want to make sure that we set the isProfile boolean to true. And we're going to grab the active profile index and set it to the input as well. Oh, really? There we go. And then we can simply call our save profile function. So let's grab save profile, plug it in over here, and that will make sure that everything's saved as well. And then we can return from here. So inside the saved profile, we also want to make one small addition. So let's open that one up. So this is save profile function, an existing one. And right before at the end over here for the return node, we want to drag in our all player profiles, and we're going to set an array element. plug it in over here. We want to set our player profile info for the item. Let's enable size to fit, and we're going to drag in our active profile index and plug this one in over here. So we don't need it if we call it from our change active profile function, but we call the save profile function from other places as well. And this will make sure that if we save our profile structure, that the array updates as well. So that's done. And then let me see, we want to make some changes to the UI show main menu function. So that's not this one, but this one. So UI show main menu, before we used to check for a saved profile, we're going to get rid of this node, and in this case we want to load all the profiles. So let's drag in load all profiles. We're going to do that every time we open the main menu, so to make sure these update. So during gameplay we only save the profile on the shooter player controller. And if we go back to the main menu, the profiles on the game instance are not updated. So we want to make sure that if we open the main menu, we load all of the profiles from the save games again, so they hold the correct information. So that's what we want to do over here. And then we can make a few changes in the event graph, and the game instance should be good to go. So let's go to our event graph. First of all, let's grab a new event, and that's event init. So that's something like begin play kind of. So this will fire at the beginning when the game instance is initialized, and we're gonna load our game settings. So simply drag in the new function. Then we're gonna create a new function, and that's going to be create new profile. So create a custom event, create new profile. And this is the function event that we're going to use to call from our widget if we want to create a new profile. So we're going to give it two inputs, and that's the player name. And that's actually a text variable. And we also want the new player profile index. So let's call it a new profile index. And that's an integer. So we're going to drag in our player profile info structure, grab a setter for that one. From the setter we're going to drag off and make a player profile, and then we can grab the name from the input of the event and keep all of the other things to the default. So we have a new profile with only the name that comes from the widget. And then we can store this one inside of our all player profiles array. So let's drag that one in, grab a set array element, plug it in, and use the index from the new profile index. And then we want to change our active profile to this one. So let's make sure we have size to fit enabled, and we actually plug in the player profile here. And then we can call our change active profile function, plug it in over here, and again grab the index, plug it in, and this will make sure that we immediately switch to the newly created profile. So these events should take care of most of our stuff. So with these events in place, we can get rid of the change player name and reset XP functions, because we're not going to use those anymore. So we have a reset XP over here, let's get rid of it. And we have change player name, and we can get rid of that one as well. So compile and save it, and our new game instance should be good to go. So now we're going to do some fun widget stuff. So first of all, we are going to create a new widget to display the profile info for each slot. So let's create a user interface widget blueprint and a user widget. So this is going to be the widget blueprint profile info. And let's open it up. So I'm going to make this entire widget a button. So let's drag in a button first. And I want to give it the same style as all my other buttons. So I'm going to go to the main menu, select one of my buttons over here and copy the style. And then profile, go back to the button and paste it. So that's good to go. Then this is going to be our button profile. So let's give it a name. and it's a variable. That's good to go. On top of this button, I'm gonna drag a horizontal box first. And for the horizontal box alignment, I want to make it align to top and then extend. So extend horizontally and then to the top aligned vertically. Then inside that, I'm going to drop a vertical box. And for the vertical box, we can set it to fill and extend. That should be good. Inside the vertical box, we are going to drop some text. So the first one in here, and that's going to be the text player name. So this text is going to be a variable, and let's make sure that it's the proper font. And I'm going to shrink it down a little bit, so 20 maybe. And we actually have a text color as well, so that should be this one. There we go. And then I also want to display the player XP and level on the profile card. So I'm going to duplicate the text twice, and this is going to be the player XP. And the last one is going to be the player level. And then for the horizontal box, we're going to drop an image inside of there. So grab an image, drop it inside the horizontal box, so it appears to the side of the text. And then for the image, I'm quickly going to select one of my rank icons. So that's the brush, and then look for a rank icon. So this is going to be sized 100 by 90. And I actually want to align it to the right, so that's good, but make sure that I select it over here as well. And then that should be good to go. So this is our profile info card. Let's compile and save it, and we can set up the graph. And let me see. So we're gonna give this a bunch of variables first. So let's create a new variable. The first one is the profile index. So that's an integer, and we want to make sure it's instance editable and exposed on spawn. Then we're going to duplicate this one, and that's going to be our widget blueprint main menu. So change the variable type to a main menu widget blueprint. And again, we want this to be exposed on spawn and instance editable. And then we also have the isActiveSlot boolean. So let's duplicate this one again, isActiveSlot. That's a boolean, and we also want it instance editable and exposed on spawn. And then we need a few other variables. So the first one is our profile info. And that's our player profile structure. So player profile. And this does not need to be instance editable, exposed on spawn. So this is a normal variable. And then we're also going to grab our structure for the XP and levels. So structure XP and levels. And that's our XP and level structure. And the last one we want is another boolean, and that's called isEmptySlot. And turn it into a bool. So now we're going to set up event construct. So let's get rid of the other stuff. And first of all, we are on a widget. So that means we are also on a local controller. And we can get our game instance, or on a local instance. So we can get the game instance. And we want to cast it to our shooter game instance. So cast to shooter game instance. And let's promote it. Well, let's not promote it to a variable. We only really need it once. So from here, we're going to get all the player profiles. So the array, we'll get all player profiles, the array of structures. And from here, we're going to get a copy, and we want to get a copy from the profile index from the variables. Then we can store that inside of our profile info. So let's drag in a setter for that one as well and hook it up. So that's good to go. Then from our player profile info, we're going to break the structure, and we actually want to get our player name. So let's drag off the player name, and let's get an equal. So let's do not exactly. So equal case insensitive. There we go. And we want to know if it's an empty slot. So let's make a literal text. and just keep the text empty. So if we had a profile slot that had nothing in here, we created a structure with an empty name, so we know this is an empty slot. So we're going to grab a branch over here, plug it in, and then if this is an empty slot, first we're going to set our boolean, so is empty slot, plug it in over here, set it to true. Let's make sure the other side is set to false. And then we can grab in the text player name, for example, and we can set the text for this one. So set text, and we're simply going to set empty in here, so we know this is an empty slot. Then let's duplicate this twice. So we want to set our XP and our level. So let's grab in the text player XP. And over here we're going to make a literal text, and that's simply 0 because there's nothing in here, so XP 0. And for the next one we want to grab the text player level and make a literal text again, and this time the level is 0, and plug it in as well. And then we want to make sure that we get rid of the rank icon, so we're going to grab in our image. So we didn't actually rename it, but there's only one image in here, so that should be good. And we're going to set the color and opacity. And let's make a linear color and keep all zeros, so that should be good. Okay, so that's that branch done. And then if it's not an empty profile, we want to do some similar stuff. So let's copy these nodes, but do not use the literal text. So plug this in over here. So we can grab the name from our structure. So we can just grab our variable over here and break it. And let's grab the player name, plug it in over here. So for the XP, I'm going to format text. And I want to say XP and then open bracket A, close bracket. So I can plug in the wildcard from the structure, and I can grab the player XP over here and do the same thing for the level. So change the text. Excuse me, I needed to cough, that's my mute button. So level, and then also grab a wildcard. There we go, and plug this one into the set text node as well. And then we want to grab our rank icon, so let's grab in our image, and we're going to set a brush from texture. And for this we need our XP and level structure, so we're going to drag in the XP and level structure and break it. So in here we have the array of HUD icons. I also didn't rename this one, so I'm on a roll. So we're going to grab this array and get a copy, and we can simply get a copy of the player level. So we can plug in the player level from the structure, and that will return the correct rank icon. And then we can plug that into the set brush from texture over here. And then there is one thing left to do, and that's grab our isActiveSlot boolean at the end over here. So we already know it's not empty, and we can set the isActiveSlot when we spawn it. So we have it over here, and we do not want to set it. We want to grab a branch and we want to check it. So it's set when we spawn the widget, and we're checking it over here. And if it's true, we're going to disable the button. So grab the button profile and set enabled, and make sure we set it to false for the true pin. And that should take care of our event graph. So this is the profile info done, and now we want to go into the main menu and start making changes in there. So let's go into the main menu, and first let's take care of the designer. So this is going to be a little bit messing around. First of all, I'm going to move this stuff out of the way. I'm not going to delete it because we can use it later. Then I'm going to drag in a new border over here, and I'm going to make it pretty big. So I'm going to size it 1000 by 600. Oh, 600. And then I'm going to set the correct color, so brush color, and give it my border color. Let's give this a proper name. So this is going to be the border profile selection. So you could choose to make a separate menu for it if you want to. I'm just using a pop-up so I can hide and show it. So this is going to be a variable, and by default we want it to be hidden. So let's make sure we have that out of the way. Inside this border I'm going to drop a canvas panel. So drag it on top of here, and now we can use it as a widget, so we do not have to mess with horizontal and vertical boxes. So this makes it a little bit easier. Now we are going to use a vertical box, so we're going to drag in a vertical box on top of our canvas panel. And if we have this vertical box selected, we have it aligned to the top left, so that's good. And let me check my notes. So I'm actually gonna size this one 400 by 600. So vertical box size 400, 600. And I'm gonna rename it as well. So this is the vertical box profiles. So in here are going to be all the profile info cards. So this needs to be a variable. And the next thing we need is a button to go back. So I'm going to grab my quit game button over here, and I'm going to press Ctrl C to copy it. Go to the canvas panel, Ctrl V to paste it. So over here, button quit game. Let's give it a size to content over here, and I'm going to anchor it to the bottom right. And then we want to align it, so make sure there's something like -50, -50, and then alignment 1, 1. So for the button, that's going to be the back button, so let's change that over here, button back, and then the text back. Okay, that's our back button. Let's see, what do we need? So we have our name selection over here, and we actually want to wrap that in a few borders again. So what I'm going to do is just drag a new border inside the canvas panel over here, and this is going to be the border new profile. So let's give it a new name first, border new profile, and that's a variable. So I'm going to make this border black so it stands out, alpha 0.7. And for this one, let me see, did I size it? So I'm going to make it 340 by 190. So 340, 190, and drag it somewhere over here. So inside that border, I'm going to grab a vertical box, drag it on top of there. No, that's above it. I want to drop it inside of there. Thank you. And inside the vertical box, I'm going to drop some text. So this is simply going to say create new profile. So let's grab the text over here and create a new profile. So I'm going to change the font and shrink it down a little bit and give it a proper color. Oh, this one. There we go. And then we want to drag in our border with the player name. Let me see if I'm doing that correctly. Button back, border new profile. So that should work. So if we grab this over here, so we grab the actual border, and we're gonna drag that inside of our vertical box over here. So now it's inside here, that should be good. And then we want a few buttons below here. So I'm gonna grab a horizontal box and drop that inside of the vertical box again. So inside the first vertical box over here. And that should make it appear below the actual player name input. And then inside there, I want to grab some buttons. So let me grab the button quit game again, for example. I'm going to copy it and then paste it in here twice. So horizontal box, paste it. And then the first button is going to be the cancel button. So let's change the text first, cancel. And I'm going to make it a little bit smaller as well, so 20. And the other button is going to be accept. And I'm also going to shrink that one down, so 20. And let's change the actual button names. So we have button accept and button cancel. Now for the horizontal box, I want to align it to the bottom, so I'm going to say fill and then bottom. And then I'm going to grab this border with the, not the new profile, but the border with the player name input, and I'm going to center it and set it to fill. That doesn't really work. Okay, I'm just going to leave it like this, that's fine. So for the accept button, I want to align it to the right and set it to fill, so that looks a little bit better. So we have a pop-up for that as well, and I think that should take care of most of our widgets over here. So there's one thing left actually. I'm gonna grab the reset XP button and I'm gonna drop that on top of my canvas panel here. So reset XP, drop it on the canvas panel. And where did it actually go? Oh really? Oh, all the way over here, okay. So we're gonna move it somewhere around here. And this is not going to say reset XP, but it's going to say reset profile. So let's change that first, reset profile. And it needs to be a little bit bigger, so grab the button. There we go. So this is going to be the button reset profile. So let's rename it over here as well. And now I think we should be pretty much good to go. So we do want to select our border new profile and also make sure that by default this one is hidden. And there is one thing left over here. If we select these borders, we want to give this border a name and turn it into a variable. So this is going to be the border menu buttons. And turn it into a variable. And then we also need a button over here to open the menu. So I'm going to grab my multiplayer button and let's duplicate it. So then I also want to duplicate one of the spacers and move that above here. Then I need to make this border a little bit bigger. And then for the new button, I'm going to rename it button profiles. And change the text into profiles. And that should be good. So I think now we do really have the designer part done. So let's dive into the graph and start setting up things over there. So it's giving us a few errors because we removed the functions from the game instance for the change player name and the reset XP. So that doesn't really matter. We can grab these nodes and delete them. And that takes care of it for now. So we're going to use these events later. So let's just keep those. First, we're going to create a function to update all of the profiles. So let's create a new function and call it update all profiles. And in here, first we're going to grab our vertical box with all of the profiles and we're going to clear the children. So we're going to start fresh. And then we also want to grab our reset button and we want to disable it. So let's grab our button reset profile and we're going to set it to be disabled. So set enabled and then false. So we're only going to enable the button if we actually have a profile selected. Then we want to grab a branch over here. Set enabled must be false, by the way. So make sure it's false. We're going to grab in our shooter game instance, and in here we have a boolean that tells us if we have a profile selected or not. So let's get is profile selected, and we want to plug it into our branch over here, and we want to create a new variable on the widget, and that's called active profile index. So this is an integer. And drag it in over here. So if we have a profile selected, we can grab it from the game instance as well. So we're going to get our active profile index and plug it in to the setter. And if we do not have one selected, we're going to set it to -1. So grab a setter, set it to -1, and that's the active profile index. Then we want to grab a for each loop over here, plug it into both of the pins, and we're going to grab all of the profiles from the game instance. So get all profiles, and this is the structures, and plug them into the for each loop. So first thing we want to do is drag off the array element, and we're going to compare that to our active profile index. So let's do equal to and plug in the active profile index. And then for this we're going to grab a branch over here, plug it into the loop body and plug this one in. So if this is true, we're going to grab our info card XP and we want to update it. So let's grab our info card XP and call the update XP info. So that means we have the active profile over here. So we want to grab this information and store it inside of the XP card. So if this is false, we simply want to create a widget. So we're going to create the profile info widget that we made. So create widget, and in here select the profile info. So that will give us the variables that we exposed on spawn. So for the owning player, that's simply our owning player. So get owning player controller, plug that in. Then we have the profile index, and that's just the index from the array. So plug it in over here. And for the main menu, we can grab a reference to our self. So drag off here, self. And for the isActive slot, we can grab the result of the equal node and plug it in directly over here. So that will make sure that that matches up. And if the widget is created, we want to add it to our vertical box profiles. So let's drag it in over here and add a child. Plug in the return value as the content, and that should be good. And then we want to do one thing if we have the for each loop completed. So we're going to drag in a branch over here, plug it in, and we want to check our active profile index if it's actually greater or equal to 0. So greater than or equal to. So if we have a profile selected or not. And if we do, we're going to grab our reset button profile and we're going to enable it. So set enabled. And enable it, plug this one into the true pin. And if this is false, we're simply going to return right away. So that will update all of the profiles and also set our active profile index variable. So we have that one done. Then we can go into the event graph and we want to start changing some stuff in here. And let me see. So first of all, let's grab our new profile button. So button profiles, and we're going to create an on-clicked event for this one. So if we click this, we want to grab our border menu buttons. So that's the button for start game, solo game, and all that kind of stuff. And we're going to set these to be disabled. So set enabled is false. And then we want to grab our border for the profile selection and we want to make it visible. So set visibility and set it to visible. And then we want to update all of our profiles. So we can simply drag in the function and plug it in over here. So we're also going to create a custom event for this. So create custom event and call this show profile menu. Show profile menu and just plug it in over here. So we can call this if we open up the game and there's no profiles stored whatsoever, then we're going to simply open the profile menu. So we can use this custom event to call that. Then let's do the back button. So let's grab button back if we want to go back from the profile menu to the main menu. So we can grab the border menu buttons again and re-enable those. So set enabled is true. And grab the border profile selection and set it to hidden. And that should be good. Now let's see, we're gonna create our create new profile. So first let's do the reset profile button because that's actually similar to creating a new profile. So we're going to grab our button reset profile, and we're going to grab an on-clicked event for this one. We already have it. So let's move it down over here. And for this one, so we're going to reset our profile. So we're going to grab our active profile index, and we need to store that inside of a variable we don't have yet. So let's drag a getter from here, and we're going to promote this to a variable, and that's our new profile index. And we're going to set that over here. And then from this, let's see, we want to grab our text input player name. So that's the box where we can put in our name if we create a new profile. And we're going to make sure that the text in here is empty. So set text, editable text, and just leave it empty. Then we want to grab our border new profile and set that to be visible. So not profile selection, but new profile. Drag it in here and set visibility. So this is going to be visible then. And then we actually want to disable a bunch of stuff. So we're going to grab our button reset profile and our vertical box for the profiles, because there's buttons inside of there as well. Then we're going to grab our back button, and we're going to grab our border menu buttons. So border menu buttons. So all 4 of those we're going to set enabled to false. Plug it in over here and make sure you connect up all of them. And then we're also going to grab our accept button, and we're going to set that to false for now as well. So grab in button accept and plug it in over here. So this is the reset profile, and like I mentioned, creating a new profile is going to be similar. So we're going to right click and create a custom event and call this create new profile. And for this one, we're going to give it an input, and that's the new profile index. So this is an integer. And then let's see, we're going to set our new profile index over here to the profile index from the input this time. So here we're setting it to the active profile index, the profile that we have selected. And over here we can create a new profile for any of the profiles by setting this input over here. And after we did that, we can simply plug it in over here and continue like we did. So that should work. Let me see, so we have a cancel button over here if we open up our create new profile pop-up. So let's do the cancel and the accept buttons over here. So let's grab the button cancel, and we're going to create an on-clicked event for that as well. And for this we simply want to grab our border new profile and set that to hidden. So set visibility, and this is hidden. Plug it in. And we want to make sure that we enable a bunch of stuff again. So let's go over here and let's copy all of these and paste them over here. And there is only one thing we do not want to re-enable, and that's our border menu buttons. So let's remove that one. So we're going to enable the reset profile, the vertical box, and the back button and set it to true. So that's the cancel button done. Now we have our accept button enabled, because I don't want to be able to enter an empty name for a profile. And I also don't want a name to be none or empty. So that's confusing, but you see what I mean in a minute. So for that, we're going to grab our onText committed event for the player name input. And let's move it over here. So if we have a input text committed, then first I'm going to check if it's not equal. So drag off here, not equal. And I'm going to use case insensitive. So for the first one, I'm going to make a literal text, and I'm just going to leave it empty. So the player name cannot be empty. Then I'm going to drag over here and look for an end boolean and grab 3 pins. So let's copy this 2 more times. And make sure that we hook it up to the text over here. So then I also don't want it to be none. and I also don't want it to be empty. So we already use the text empty if we have an empty profile, so this will be really confusing. Now there really are a ton more of things that you would like to check normally, but we're gonna keep it to this. So then we're gonna grab a branch over here, and if this is all true, then we are good to enable the accept button. So we're gonna grab our button accept, and we're gonna simply set is enabled and enable the button. So if we have a valid name in there, we are allowed to continue. And then all we need to do is do the on-clicked event for the accept button. So let's grab that one as well. And if we have this, we want to grab our shooter game instance. And for the shooter game instance, we're going to call our create new profile. Oh, really? Fine, create new profile. So we're gonna grab our input player name text box, and we're gonna get the text from here. So get text, editable text. So that's the text the player put in, and we can plug it into the player name. And for the profile index, we can use our new profile index boolean. Plug it in over here. Then after we updated everything on the game instance, we're going to call our update all profiles. So this will make sure this grabs all of the information from the game instance again and updates it. Then we want to grab our border new profile and hide it again because we're done with it. So set visibility and set this to be hidden. And then let's see, we have the vertical box for the profiles and the back button that we want to re-enable. So let's grab the vertical box profiles and our button back. And both of those need to be re-enabled. So set enabled, and that's going to be true, and plug in both of them. And that should be good as well. Okay, so with this stuff in place, we need to go to our begin play event, or that's actually construct because we are on a widget. And on event construct, we were getting the info from the player profile. Oh, come on. And we were putting that inside of the player name box. So we do not want to do that anymore. Let's get rid of that. And we do want to grab update all profiles in here. So if we open the menu, we want to update all of the profiles and then grab our XP info card and update that as well. So we need all the information to be updated for this one to work. That's why we need to call this one first. And then we can simply grab a branch in here. And we're going to check our active profile index. So that's set by this function. And we're going to check if it's smaller than 0 or less than 0. Plug it in over here. And if this is true, we're going to show our profile menu. So we're going to call our custom event show profile menu. So this means if we do not have an active profile selected, and that pretty much only happens if we do not have any profiles set up yet, if all of them are empty. So if we enter the game for the very first time, it will display the show profile menu by default. Okay, so that should be good as well. Now we need another function. Yeah, we're not done yet, I'm sorry. So we're going to create a profile button clicked function that we can call if we click one of the profile slot buttons. So I'm going to switch my notes quickly. Now this is a really small function, so it's not going to be too bad. Profile button clicked. And for this one, we're going to give it the input of an actual ProfileInfo widget. So let's give it one input. And that's our widget blueprint ProfileInfo. So let's turn it into the correct type as well. Oh, really? ProfileInfo. So first of all, we're going to drag off here and we're going to get if this is an empty slot. So let's grab a branch, plug it in over here. So if this is an empty slot, we want to create a new profile. So we click the profile button, but it's empty. So that means we want to probably create a new one. So we're going to simply call our create new profile. That's a function on the actual widget, so not the one on the game instance. And we can plug in our new profile index by dragging from the ProfileInfo widget and we can get the profile index. So plug that in over here and that should work. And if it's not an empty slot, then we want to change the active profile. So this is something we want to do on the game instance. So drag off the game instance and change active profile. Plug it into the false bin and grab the profile index from the profile info card. And then after that's done, we want to call our update all profiles. And we also want to update our XP info card, so drag it in as well and update XP info. So that's all. That wasn't too bad. So compile and save this as well. Now this should take care of our main menu, and there's only one thing left inside of our widget blueprint profile info to create the onClicked event. So let's open the profile info again. And let's go to the graph in here. So we want to create the onClicked event for the button. So let's grab our button profile, onClicked. And then we want to grab in the reference from the main menu and simply call the profile button clicked function that we just created. Plug this in and plug in a reference to ourselves. And that should take care of it. Okay, so hopefully we did everything correctly and we should be good to go to test it right now. So first of all, I'm going to remove the save games. So let's right click and show in Explorer. And then navigate to the saved folder and then save games. And let's just get rid of this one. There we go. So now we should be good and we're going to test this in a little bit. Okay, so let's launch a 2-player game and let's see what happens. So we're going to launch standalone from the main menu. And let's grab in both windows first. So we deleted all save games, so by default it's opening the profiles menu. That's good. There's nothing in our profiles, so that's good as well. Let's create a new one. I'm going to click this slot and it opens the create new profile. So I'm going to enter my name in here. I'm Blunt. Hello. Accept this. So you'll notice it does not live update. That's because it's not something that would happen in a normal game. So it's both loading from the same save game, and that's not something that would happen if this would be a normal build. So if I would go back and into profiles, it doesn't update. So if I open this game the next time, all the profiles will be in here. So that's just the downside of working with one save game and 2 games. So we have a new profile in here. Now let's create a profile for the client as well. And I'm just going to make sure I use a different slot and then there shouldn't be any issues. So I'm going to use Stuffy and accept this one as well. Now let's go back and let's go multiplayer host game. So this is Blunt and then multiplayer search game. So another benefit of this is that we can now test in the editor with both the host and the client having a different save game, and they can have different XP, different levels, different loadouts and all things like that. So it does make testing a little bit more realistic, although in the end for an actual build it doesn't matter, but it's just a nice actual side note. So we are in game. We do not have the player names on screen, but we're going to work on that in the next episode because now we can actually load the correct player names as well. So let's see, I'm going to use the triggers here to level up quickly. So I'm going to make this one level 5, for example, and then I'm going to go back to the host. And this one is going to be level 2. So we have different results for both players. Now let's return to the main menu. And as you can see, both of them still have the correct XP info on the screen. And if we go to profiles, now everything is updated as well because it's now loading from the save game. As soon as we open the main menu, it pulls all the information from the save game and then everything is updated again. So you can see we now have 2 profiles in place. So you can still select both profiles on the same on each instance, because again, this is one save game for 2 local games, so something that would not happen in a normal build. So in the end, everything works as intended, and we now have multiple save slots ready to go. So thanks for watching, everybody. I think it was a really long one again. All this widget stuff, it just doesn't go really quickly, and with some explanation in there as well, we're soon over an hour. So we have some errors over here, invalid simulate options, so that's nothing to do with the actual code. This is just Unreal being Unreal. Okay, so thanks for watching, everybody. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please consider leaving a like, and I'll be back soon for more. Later, guys.